Hello, BookTube, and we're back with another Simak, Clifford D. Simak video. And I have with me today Scott Danielson and Ira from SF Words of Wonder and Gavin from Genre Books.
Hi.
Hello.
And we'll be talking about Empire. This is my copy.
Wow.
And it's a novel that it was published in 1951. But it was written by Clifford Simak sometime in the 40s. So hence putting it here in this order. And it originally was a novel written by John W. Campbell when he was around 18. So meaning about 1928, 29. And he was so impressed with Cosmic Engineers, he gave him the manuscript and said, "Can you do anything with this?" And as in an interview in the Bibliography that was published, he says, let me see. It says, I suppose it was somewhat better than what he had written at the age of, that's his. Oh, yeah, he says here, he sent me his story and I gagged when I read it. But I sat down to rewrite Empire. Sent it off to him, and he refused it. And he was saying something I can't. Yeah, Empire was essentially a rewrite of John's plot. I may have taken a few of the ideas and actions, but I didn't use any of his words. And I am certainly, I certainly tried to humanize his characters.
Tried to humanize his characters. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I missed the fact that Campbell actually wrote this, and then I knew that he had something to do with it, but that he actually wrote it and then gave it to Simak and said, "Rewrite this."
Yeah.
And then rejected it, which is crazy, but.
Yeah, and then
H.L. Gold, something he didn't like, huh?
Yeah, H.L. Gold was starting the Galaxy, like the one you have there, Scott.
That's the Galaxy novel, right?
Yeah, and so he needed something, so Campbell told him that Simak had something.
This is just like an issue, yeah.
And begged him for it, basically.
Well, that must be like money for old rope for Simak then, sort of 10 years later.
Yeah.
Almost,
Galaxy,
that could be, yeah.
Galaxy novel number 7, it says.
Yeah.
So they must have published several of these.
You want me to...
Yeah, a whole list of them.
Cool.
In the beginning of my edition, there's a little synopsis. You want me to read that?
Please,
so
yeah.
People have an idea? Because I don't know if I would... summarize this one up good. So it says, a tale of greed and interplanetary conflicts. Spencer Chambers had plans of making the solar system his own private empire. He had the money to do it. Chambers was a trillionaire industrialist who was the president of the interplanetary power, an economic juggernaut and the biggest source of power throughout the inhabited spaceways. And Chambers knew that he who controlled the sources of power also controlled the destiny of the planets. But there were other men who had different ideas. They saw the great days of the solar system that was free from monopolistic suppression and slavery. And when these men developed an alternative power source, the stage was set for a showdown the likes of which mankind had never witnessed before.
It's tremendous.
We'll get away from monopolistic trillionaires trying to dominate all the sources of power in the solar system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought more than once it's kind of crazy to be reading this at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Because it resonated.
Yeah. Well, there's the really good quote about democracy right in the first chapter. What does he say here? Well, he's calling economic dictatorship, said Spencer Chambers to himself. That's what John Moore Mallory called it. Well, why not? Such a dictatorship would ensure the best business brains at the heads of the governments, would give the solar system a business administration, and would guard against the mistakes of popular government. Democracies are based on a false presumption, the theory that all people were fit to rule. It granted intelligence where there was no intelligence. It presumed ability where there was not the slightest trace of any. It gave the idiot the same political standing as the wise man, the crackpot the same political opportunity as the man of well-grounded common sense, the weakling the same voice as the strong man. It was government by emotion rather than by judgment.
Yeah, and that's we should be clear that that's not Simak's point of view, right?
Yeah.
That's Spencer Chambers'
Yeah.
point of view
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, reading that at this point in history is rough to hear. You know, hello, Joseph. But yeah,
Hey, Joseph.
it's
So, yeah, this is kind of strange now because it's saying show on stage. I'm not sure what has happened here. Okay.
everything looks normal so far. Yeah.
Yeah, because it just pops up a comment and it says show on stage.
And now,
Okay.
yeah.
It's on stage now.
Okay. Oh, is that just a new way of phrasing that button?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah, it seemed odd.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, yeah, he's saying, yeah, the businessman, Joseph Chambers, who wants to become the dictator.
Well, he kind of is one, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what the Mannings are trying to bust.
But they are billionaire businessmen too.
Yes,
so
they are.
this isn't it isn't the Robin Hood story that it sort of paints later in the tale. It is two people who have different ultimate aims but are using the same means to do it.
Right.
And and they do it. They have this. For me, one of the best bits in the book is where they're having that fight in the stock market. And he's found a way to basically circumvent the rules to get a march on the stock prices as they appear in various points of the solar system, which is something that people do in a far less glamorous way now with the high frequency trading. You've got firms that have laid sort of fiber optic cables for their own personal use across the globe so that they can get those stock prices a fraction of a second quicker and have it timed so that trades will happen off of the back of the information that comes in. It's quite funny to see a very sort of broad brush depiction of that coming 65 years before that actually ended up happening.
Yeah. Michael Lewis wrote that book. You might have read it about front running the stock market and all that pay for order flow stuff. It's that was my favorite part of this book too, of how they were manipulating the stock market to get a bunch of capital together, take on this guy.
Well, the interesting thing is too that it's definitely super science, and there's this because it's before its time. But I like also too where he says, I've discovered something. So, have you discovered atomic power? Oh God, no, we haven't got that far yet.
Yeah,
just the fourth dimension.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, but I can imagine if you gave them till tea time, they'd have cracked it. It was a bit like that in this book, which part of its charm, should we say?
It's also when you think that he wrote it when he was about 18, like originally. So I'm assuming the characters were similar, or the plot was similar to John W. Campbell's. So you're talking at the similar time as Skylark of Space, which is very similar, where these two rich people are, building ships, and they're rivals. You know, there's no girl involved here. You know,
Yeah,
None.
that is it is very similar to one that Campbell, I can't remember exactly when he wrote it, The Mightiest Machine.
yeah,
So this is before the Wade Morley ones, Wade Morley Arcot novels. I think The Mightiest Machine is about 1935, something like that. It is very, very similar. And they do invent, we need a way out of this. Quick, give me a slide rule. I'll invent my way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of passages in here. There's one that just reminded me of this is a quote from Doctor Who. I don't know your feelings on Doctor Who, Sean. But I'll give you the quote anyway, because he's just invented a machine. It says, the machine that goes ding. I made it myself. It lights up in the presence of shape-shifting DNA. Also, it can microwave frozen dinners from up to 20 feet and download comics from the future. I never know when to stop. It was the fact that we've invented this spy drone. They invent a spy cam. Oh, and it's got some issues here. So we've also turned it into a teleportation device. And it's a time machine. And and that's not even their main focus. This is just the stuff they're doing in their free time whilst they're making this ship.
And I love it too. It's like as when they strand Chambers out there, and it's like, okay, well, and then the guy figures, oh, eureka! I figured out how to do this. And it's like, well, how long is it going to take? Well, it's basically, he says, give me till tea time, and I'll get it all sorted, and just out of nothing, like this is MacGyver before MacGyver,
It's Star Trek obviously came later, but it's Star Trek is like that, where they solve some problem with this science, that they come up with and that you could never have predicted. It's like, oh, we can tweak this to do this, and then it's like, all right, let's do that, and then they do it, and it's a pretty quick pace of that kind of thing throughout.
And it's like you can see Campbell in it. You can see some of Simak in it, like the optimism of the future of Simak to a certain extent, but you see Campbell in his way of looking forward to the future that humans will dominate and there's no aliens, at least at this point. Like one guy's maybe gonna look for some, but but if he does find them, he's gonna Chambers is going to dominate them. He's going to be their dictator, or their god. And so that's very Campbell. And the outward movement of humanity into the galaxy, a great wagon train into the stars, as the way it sort of ends. But the thing there's, like I say, I didn't say yet on the live that I enjoyed this more by rereading it after Cosmic Engineers, because I did see a few things from Cosmic Engineers, because he talks about cosmics, and that's something that's come up twice, of this cosmic power, and it's been used in other ways in science fiction of cosmic horror, but he uses it as the background, I guess how would you explain it? I guess it's the background physics of the universe, and you can tap into that for unlimited resources and power, energy, and that's what they do in Cosmic Engineers, because they're engineers of cosmics. Kind of makes sense.
When we read Cosmic Engineers, I was afraid that it was going to be like Empire, and I ended up really liking Cosmic Engineers, but Empire was, I don't know. There was a lot of cliche, and seeing Campbell's kind of writing in there, and I've not really been a big fan of Campbell except for Who Goes There. And then Yeah, this was a little bit of a letdown, but reading afterwards, reading reviews, I think a lot of people didn't realize that this was something that he dusted off of Campbell's writing. So I think it's a book that the universe tried not to get this thing published, and maybe it would have been better if it didn't.
Yeah, well, that's why, like, he basically disowned it. That's why it's sort of like, I guess he needed the money, and when somebody's throwing a check at you and you've already done the work, it's hard not to say no. Yeah. I think, but he didn't care for it. It was a bit of an embarrassment, but I enjoyed it for what it is. That's like, I can read the Arcot Ward and Morley, I think, ones of Campbell, and I can enjoy those. I can read Skylark ones of E. Doc Smith, and I can enjoy these super science, space opera things, because they call it a pot boiler, but that's sort of what it is for science fiction. But if you go in knowing that's what it is, I just sort of roll with it, and I enjoyed the what there was of it. And then at the end, it's sort of like, you just sort of smirk of this huge thing of, now humanity can go out and create an empire, but not by having a dictator, but we're still going to have an empire. So there's empires on many levels here.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think it must need an emperor at some point for it to be an empire. There is definite Skylark here, but I think what the Skylark books have and what the Cosmic Engineers have is a lot more in the characterization.
Yes, definitely.
That is absolutely missing from the Campbell, and Campbell's influence here. You can see where Simak has tried to put a patina of interest on the characters, and the main villains are pretty much sort of little bit of a mustache twirling, but there's not a lot to work with. I have the same problem with this one that I have with the Campbell novels, that I can't really tell the difference between the two or the three engineers at all. They're both geniuses. They're both hyper competent. They both talk the same. They both do the same things. They both smoke pipes.
Yeah.
And you would imagine you would just have the one character, were it not for the fact that you need to have some dialogue to explain what's going on, because there's also zero introspection.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Agreed.
And I think it's something that you do get with Doc Smith, because the villain in Doc Smith is always thinking to himself, and you do get to know his character, whether it's a good one or not. At least there's something there for you to glom onto. Here, there's just I read it a week and a half ago. I can't remember the two characters' names. I actually remember I remember Mallory. I remember Chambers.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name of the henchman who tries to take over, but he was good value. I think this is the bit where you try to see the sort of the ignorant populism try to take over from the technocrat.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is too, like you say, that the characters are quite flat. But what would have Campbell's manuscript been like in comparison?
Do we know why Campbell rejected it?
No. Well, Simak doesn't. See, I don't think that as far as I know, there's no letters that I can find that talks about this. But he says, where does it say here? I suppose it was somewhat better than what he had written at the age of 18, but it was still pretty bad. And John, no doubt, after much cogitation, and a great deal of soul searching and some bad nights turned it down, for which I don't blame him. At any rate, I tossed it up on the shelf and forgot about it. And then that's where he's saying that, it lay on the shelf where I had tossed it. Then several years later, Horace Cole started what he called the Galaxy science fiction novels. Number one had a beautiful story by Frank Russell called Sinister Barrier. Several others followed. Among them were Legion of Space by Jack Williamson, Prelude to Space by Arthur C. Clarke. Then one day I got an agonizing call from Gold. I need a story, he said. John tells me you wrote a story that's never been published. Could I see it? And Simak says he phoned John and asked and talked to him. I said, I don't want to give this story to Gold without offering you the opportunity to take half the responsibility for it. And John replied, no way, no way, no way at all.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And in this, the only sort of book that's a study of Simak's writing, he gets a few minor points wrong, which is sort of par for the course. And he said, well, Simak and Campbell were both accurate in their judgments of Empire. It was probably the poorest science fiction story ever written by two men who have written some pretty good science fiction. But he also says that the original manuscript has not been published. So it makes me wonder if that manuscript is out there somewhere. Because that would be an interesting footnote to see what it was like.
I'm not sure it'd be a great read.
No, but like I said,
not.
it would be a footnote.
Interesting nonetheless. I wonder if it's in his papers, Simak's papers.
Yick. I don't think it is because it's not in the search aid or whatever they call it. I don't think.
Not there.
So it must be. It must be with Campbell's paper somewhere if it's still available, because the Alec Novella Lee found the original for Who Goes There, the original manuscript. So it could be with stuff like that, And I know his papers at a couple of universities, so it could be there somewhere. So you'd have to publish.
Yeah, because when I think about it, I can't think. So I mean, we have here Campbell saying, "Hell no, I don't want my name on this at all." But I'm perplexed as to what it is that he objected to, because it feels like Campbell to me. I mean, something that he would like.
Yeah, like Simak could have been, exaggerating this a little bit for the comic effect.
Wasn't Campbell trying to get more like realistic science instead of the super pseudoscience? I mean, he was big into PSI, but
that could be it. I mean, this is pseudoscience.
Yeah, so, and that's what was that was a lot of the stuff during late 20s and into the 30s. So I think it's time had passed on, and I guess maybe he thought that Simak would just take the kernel of the idea and do something completely different with it. But maybe Simak just thought, well, this is somebody else's writing. All I'll do is just buff it up a little bit. I'll rewrite it, but I'll keep essentially what they had. And that's probably not what Campbell actually wanted, because he just sort of got his own manuscript back, but in a different form. But again, without any letters, there must have been some correspondence, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing in the 2 volumes of Campbell's letters that talks about this. Simak does talk about getting like 3-4 page, very small writing letters from Campbell, and he just sort of always rolls his eyes because it's like, he's got to read this now.
Wow. So I'm sorry if I missed this point, but did Simak rewrite it at all when he gave it to Galaxy? Or did he just take it off the shelf
I think he
as
just
it
took
was.
it off the shelf. And
Okay.
well, you see, this guy says he rewrote it. He wrote it for it. So
For
that's why I
Galaxy,
say
he
I think
rewrote it
it's
again.
yeah.
Because
Which
it's interesting to think about either, both ways. Because if he's writing this in the 30s, we're in the Great Depression and the stock market crash and everything. That's an interesting thing to think about. He talks about government propagandists hiding inventions. Saying, well, this material engine isn't safe. So the government was trying to suppress it and things. But then if he rewrote it for 1950, World War II had happened, and you'd think that it'd be different.
yeah, I get from the interview with Muriel R. Becker and the in the bibliography is that he just took it off the shelf, dusted it off, and set it off to gold.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy sort of saying is that he did or he suggests that he did. I was trying to find where he actually mentioned it here. Yeah, it says he wrote only 2 novels, both space operas, and one not really his own, but in collaboration with John W. Campbell. Collaboration may be too strong an epithet to apply to Empire, a story Campbell originally wrote when he was 18 years old. Campbell was never able to get Empire published, and justifiably so. When Campbell published Simak's Cosmic Engineers in 1939, it's quite taken with it, and he called it a power novel with sensitivity. Campbell then sent Simak Empire and asked him if he would rewrite it. Simak gagged when he read it, and so he's using that interview with Muriel R. Becker here, but manfully forged ahead. His effort was somewhat better, but Campbell himself turned the rewrite down. Simak, with a sigh of relief, dutifully put Empire on the shelf. However, when Horace Gold was published in Galaxy Science Fiction, he had heard about Campbell and had an unpublished story and pleaded for the right to publish it. Thus, Empire finally saw print, but not until 1951. I thought there was something somewhere was saying that. No, maybe I misunderstood that. Yeah, because he doesn't actually say that he rewrote it, and there's nothing to say that he did anything to it. I think he just dusted it off.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, what you say about the war not really having an impact on that makes sense, and you've got that part which you've already mentioned about the atomic power. Well, by 1951, that is now a thing. You would, if you were going to make any change, you'd make a technical change like that to stop your science fiction looking anachronistic.
Yeah, he did that with a few places in the city stories. He added some stuff in that sort of brought in the Second World War because he'd written it sort of during, and he was looking back after the war. Yeah, this is weird how you do this now. Put the comments up.
Pseudoscience. What I mean by pseudoscience is that it's just completely made up. It's not attempting to be accurate in any way. And in this story, they come up with this thing called a material energy engine, and that thing can do anything that they think of, really. As we move forward in the story, it's like, okay, we can, teleport. First, we can just send an image, and then the next thing you know, we can teleport. And it can also drive a ship, and I mean, it was everything.
Yeah, and
whenever a problem was in front of them, one of the scientists would say, "Aha! But can't we just tune the blah 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 and do this?"
And they don't
tachyon drives all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they don't even really attempt to explain how it works. It's just the fourth dimension,
Yeah, right.
Well, I like too that like the way the basis of Chambers' Empire is batteries, but he doesn't call it a battery, it's an accumulator. It's just taking energy and storing it like a battery, but No, you don't want to call it a battery, so you call it an accumulator.
The accumulator, yeah. Yeah, so, but the idea that you have this proprietary power source that everybody uses, and the power that you have is a result of that, and then you've got this new material engine that these new guys want to bust his monopoly with. So some of that is interesting societally, I think.
Well, the other thing
Yeah.
is that you think of, because like, well, they even mention it that, with somebody with this power, because they're going to give it to everybody.
Mhm.
It's like there's no privacy.
Yeah.
Nobody can hide anything. You can't um, you can't have justice. You can't have police force. You can't keep people in prison. Can't do any of the stuff. But then it's because the bad guys in the story up to this point figure out a way to counteract that, so they can actually, level the playing field back to the way it was before, to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think wasn't it a Clark story called Light of Other Days? Gosh, I'm not positive I have that right. And I think Light of Other Days, there was a novel that I think Stephen Baxter and him. I don't know if Arthur C. Clarke was alive at the time, but it seems that it was expanded into a novel, and Baxter's name was on it too. But there was this thing where you could look back into the past. There was a device, and you could look back in the past at historical events and things. And then by the end of the story, it you could look an instant into the past. And the moment you could do that, then there was a complete loss of privacy. Like, people would be wondering what Madonna was doing or something, and they could look an instant in her past, and so therefore it's as if they're watching live.
Yeah, well,
so the privacy disappeared. And I can't remember if that's the name of that book or not, but it reminded me of that in here, and this is so much earlier. That whole concept was interesting.
In Childhood's End, the overlords give humans a TV screen to look into the past on there as well. So he like all writers, they recycle ideas or things,
Yeah, but that was pretty early for that. That was kind of neat.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's kind of hard, because I was trying to find, and I looked up. There was one book that I didn't look into that I have, and I just thought of it now. Like the idea of this cosmics that Simak used in both Cosmic Engineers and this one, and it's like, where do these concepts come up in science fiction? Sometimes you can identify pretty easily who originated them, but not all the time. It's like, it just seems that people start using this, but where did it start? And it's like, where did that idea start about, with a T? Because there were quite a few stories in the 30s and even in the 20s about TVs, about being able to see things. So, but did Simak, take this, and this was a real leap forward into spy surveillance, or he just picked up little pieces and did this? And that's where it's kind of hard to do, because unless you read every single story and make notes of what everybody wrote, it's hard to find this, because like there's dictionaries and encyclopedias of science fiction, but they don't always have this stuff in there. Occasionally somebody has tracked it down, but there's so many smaller things that there isn't. Because if you look at time travel, you can find out who originated time travel, the first story with time travel. Those are big themes, big concepts. But the idea of spy TV,
and you would have to pour through all those old pulp magazines, because there was just so many of those out, and that's where everything was coming out, and probably giving everybody those ideas.
Yeah, like there is a really good book. It's called The Gernsback Years, by E.F. Blyer and somebody else that it's basically every story that's in the Gernsback magazines from 26 to 36, and it gives all the theme, like it gives themes so you can look up stuff, and that's where I didn't look, where I should have looked to see if I could find that they picked out one of those themes, and then it'll reference the story, and then it'll give the outline of the story.
But this really does come from the influence of super science as well, because some of these ideas are just being taken from scientific development that is happening at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties in with Gernsback, because Gernsback starts with these sort of home electronics magazines, which start incorporating these small pieces of fiction within them. And these are the first pieces of scientifiction or scientifiction, however you pronounce it, before amazing stories, astounding stories, amazing stories starts. So with the television, there is by that point a television. There might not have been when Campbell first wrote it, but or it would have just have happened really. Logie Baird was 26 and this was 28. He wouldn't have seen it by this point, but you would take the kernel of an emerging technology that people have now heard about and extrapolate it and turn it into this big, wonderful experiment and all these things that can happen.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, people are taking that and then they're looking at the applications and the ultimate ends of this. So, you take the idea of a car, then you take a race car, and then later in the late 40s, 50s, when things are a bit more depressing, someone's writing about the traffic jam, because that is the end result of all of these things. And this, with this end of privacy, here is just used as a tool to win. They don't really examine the implications of what it can do, apart from a very few paragraphs. And then, of course, by the time they've realised there's an issue, there's someone with a super science brain who's figured out a way to block this.
Yeah, but the thing is to try to go backwards, deconstruct all that to where the original was. Like you say, Yogi Baird with TV, but also at the same time, there was somebody, I think, in New York City or New York that was doing some stuff with TV. So, and you see Campbell was there, so he might have, that might be in his original story. There's all this stuff that people, there'll be like a sensational news story of something that's happening, some scientific thing, and somebody just riffs with it and just goes, well, what if, and as Kayla says, isn't the made up stuff in science fiction why people read it. He loves this pseudoscience because it's nuts. In many ways that's exactly it.
But there's all sorts of flavors of science fiction. If you're into hard science fiction, you want it to be based in reality and maybe speculating what you could do with real things, but it has to be explained in hard science fiction. You can't just throw things out.
Well, in these they do throw everything out, and Hugo Gernsback wanted stuff that was real science, and he wanted it to be a teaching tool. The fiction to be in a sense a teaching tool to learn about science and to have real gadgets. It's a gadget. He was very gadget orientated, but the thing is, even some of the hard science stuff, it is extrapolated so far that it is super science, but it's based on scientific principle and possible theories. So like they still will do super science, but it's less, pseudoscience, but it seems less pseudo because there are theories that most people sort of know, of certain things, but then it's just we'll just forget about that. This is like we can go faster than the speed of light. Yeah, we'll just figure out a way to do it. But we won't explain it.
I think that's the most often the thing that we give science fiction, especially in space opera, is that we can fly between the stars, and that is usually a jump, right?
Without time dilation,
right? Without any of that. So, but once you give them that, like we recently read The Engines of God, right? But there's nothing in there that's like this. So, but I agree with Ira. I mean, there's just different levels of science fiction, different kinds of things where you're reading about a universe that you think is possible, or you're reading in a universe that you don't think is possible, and that gets right back into the Panchen fantasy versus what did they call they call it mimetic fiction versus fantasy.
Yeah, and the other thing is too that Simak's view, like he doesn't have the hard science fiction. He'll take it for granted that this is scientific, but he wants to know what the effect is on sort of people, or what people have their effect on the technology, and that's and again it's science. That's why science fiction I think is so cool, because there's so many ways you can approach it. You can approach it as space opera, and it's fun, and it can be fun that way.
Yeah, and like Gavin was saying, in this book, you don't get any of the implications of this. No. You just get this kind of adventure story, space opera. But Simak usually is that's what he's focusing on, the philosophy of what this means and these ideas, and that was lacking in this one.
Well, it does at the end have implications, but a different way of this is going to be the wagon train to the stars. Like it's going to be like this is the thing that's going to have mankind moving out to the galaxy or to the universe and taking over. That's the implication, and we're never going to look back. That's how it is, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I did find an article that Simak wrote for Ad Astra in 1939, where he talks about this development in science fiction, and it's and he sticks mostly to the character side of things, rather than so much the science side. That's sort of like blended in with it, and it's a little bit of a mea culpa as well. He sort of, I'm not exempt from any of this. I did some of this myself, and I've got a feeling he's talking about this book when he's putting that in there,
and probably Cosmic Engineers as well. Even though it's at the same time, like he's still doing that to a certain extent, but it's more grounded, I think, in there.
Yeah, I think this has more of a tradition of that sort of trio of scientists. It's usually sort of 3 good scientists or 2 good, 1 bad, and the dynamics between the 2. But really, you're only looking at the good and the bad, because, like we said, we can't really see the difference between one good character and the other. They're interchangeable. It's a lot of surface here. I honestly think the Cosmic Engineers doesn't follow that model because of the introduction of the main female protagonist. She's coming into all of it from the outside, and she's coming into it from the past as well, which I think is a little bit telling. It's like she's got a very different outlook on how to do things. She's also showing a little bit of the superiority of the thinking of her time, rather than a little bit of degeneration that's happened over time because they rejected her theories. You get the feeling with this book that if they had stuck with what's the main character's name?
Chambers
Chambers.
Chambers or Mannings?
Manning, yeah. If they had stuck with his way of doing things, life would be absolutely wonderful when you'd have this sort of amazing empire. But what you see, just having Chambers as a character, he's not a one-off. It's never going to happen. It seems a little bit of a false optimism.
Yeah.
It rings a little hollow.
And also too, the difference is, well, there's a similarity too, because you've got good and bad in both the stories. Like the hellhounds of the cosmos are the bad ones, and then you've got some other crisis that they have to figure out, and it's like the structure is kind of similar, but the execution is very different because of the characters, and you don't show the bad guys at all, sort of as much in Cosmic Engineers. You see a little bit about the hellhounds, but that's it. But the crisis is the galaxies coming together, or the universes coming together. Is it galaxy? Yeah, it's universes actually. Yeah, universes that are coming together. So and here you don't have that, but you still got something that they're pitting each other. They're I'm not wording it very well at the moment. My brain's not working, but it's the thing that the structure is similar, but the execution is different because it's more human. It's not just cold, and it's not it's not just good and bad. Because there is good and bad, but there's subtleties of it in Cosmic Engineers, and there isn't here. It's just good, and they are seen as good and bad.
Yeah, in Cosmic Engineers, you get some of his philosophy in there, and when they go to the future Earth, you get to kind of explore what the future timeline comes of what's happening. So it all kind of weaves together. I thought that one, I definitely got his voice in there and all of his ideas, and this one just felt like Gavin said, very surface level kind of book. There is some ideas thrown out and stuff, but not what I was expected of Simak, really.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think he just took he probably didn't feel like he should change maybe Campbell's story that much, other than just trying to insert a few things but keeping the plot the same. I kind of feel that that's what he'd be doing, rather than just saying, okay, well, I'm gonna take this totally different. I'm gonna do something completely different, but still have the idea of this autocracy, or rich person doing this and trying to create an empire. But he kept it strictly to what Campbell was doing, I think.
Yeah, and maybe there's a miscommunication between the two of them.
Yeah, because I don't think. Yeah, Campbell probably wanted him to do his thing. Do what he did in Cosmic Engineers, and he doesn't. A few
interesting
comments here.
Yeah, that comment's good. I like this comment because this can be like prophetic if someone gets it right. But you look at how many things people didn't get right, or didn't even come up with the idea of a cell phone, really.
I'm still waiting for my rocket boots. I was promised this back in the early 80s.
Well, he even says it in here that they kept saying that faster than light speed was impossible until somebody figured something out, and it is. Everybody's saying that now, but you kind of look in the past, and people say, well, you can't go faster than the strongest horse. How many horses can you put together to pull something, a horse? And then somebody invents the combustion engine, and it's like, oh, well, that's different. So that could go faster. And then, but you can't go. You can only go fast with a combustion engine. And then you got rockets. Well, okay, that's something different as well. So yeah, it's just like there could be something. So they're trying to say that never say never, but there's no science based in this, other than I guess the fact that that they do know that there is energy in the universe. There's a lot of energy. If you could tap that, what could you do?
Mm-hmm.
And then your imagination runs wild with that.
Right.
Yeah, for cosmic energy, read dark matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
There's Chris
Yeah.
from Liminal Spaces.
Hello.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's I wasn't very clear on there what I was trying to say about the there's similarities but the differences, but they're at the core. I think there is a similarity, but it's how it's worked out. The execution of it is very different, and that's the other thing that is different from Campbell's thing is where you do have Skylark of Space. You have even though the female character doesn't do a lot in there, but it creates a different dynamic. Definitely, it creates a different dynamic. And in Campbell's, there's usually no women at all. Like, are there any in the Arcot, Wade, and Morley stories? I don't know if there's women. If they are, they're probably just mentioned. I don't remember any off the top of my head.
I can't remember them being any, nor in the Mightiest Machine.
Yeah.
In this one, in Empire, I think there was just a secretary once. That was, I think, about it.
Was there even a secretary?
I think at one point, briefly.
Yeah. It's so brief that you don't even notice it, and
Yeah.
it's only at the end where he mentions about men and women going out into the universe. You know.
Yeah, you might need both.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling maybe Simak changed that line from its original. And I mean, I don't know what female characters written by John Campbell would look like. I shudder to think. I don't think he would be doing himself any favors.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean,
Yep.
the male characterizations aren't exactly deep. He is a man, and he can't get the men right.
Well, I think Simak's struggling with Chambers here at the end because Chambers doesn't want to go back to Earth. He wants to continue out into the universe because he's got this power now, and he's like, well, you know, but there's no one else. You been to these planets, and there's no life there. And it's like, well, he wants to create, and it's like, yeah, but he's by himself. So what's he going to do if he can't find, you know, a human species out there, you know? And
Well,
it's like,
we'll just change his science to biology. Give him a couple of days, he'll figure something out.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like Simak was struggling there a little bit because that could be what Campbell sort of had, that he's going to go out and create a new civilization by himself.
Yeah. He's going to start cloning himself with that machine. Yeah.
That's great.
So what would you say, like, I guess this is a book for the Simak completists, maybe?
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah.
It's usually, it's never, or it's rarely listed on his books. Like, it's usually, it's not, like, if you see a checklist, it's usually not there. And I think you need, I not need, but I still like it. Like, that's the thing. I've read it twice now, and I'll probably wind up rereading it at some point because I get chuckles out of it. I chuckle at places because it's so bad. It's like watching, you know, these B movies. Like, some movies are so bad that you just love watching them because they're so bad.
There's oh, wait a minute, I've got to see if I can find the quote. I did actually write it down because I thought I honestly didn't know at this point whether Simak was being serious. Give me one moment. I will find it.
Look at Kalen's comment here while you do that. Science claims are mathematical. Reason claims are just words. The closest writing gets to math is belief, plausible belief or weirdness, psychohistory, or the worm. Emperor of Dune. Well, cycle history is like a pseudoscience anyway, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can that ever work? And,
I think that actually was a suggestion from Campbell to Asimov, wasn't it?
it was, yeah. But it's like, to me, genetically enhancing something and grafting a human onto a worm seems more scientifically possible than maybe cycle history, because that's predicting. How can you predict something? Like, I don't know if mathematics could actually do that, because
you can always get the mule. So there it goes.
Yeah.
Speak to an actuary.
The mule just makes it screws it all up. Yeah.
Okay, I found it. I honestly don't know whether this is supposed to be a joke. Russ will build the greatest ship, the fastest ship, the most powerful ship the solar system has ever known.
And then you need the
Damn,
hand
said
to
Russ.
go with
The
it.
thing slipped again. He glanced at the offending nut. I'll put a lock washer on it this time. It's just like, this is the best ship the solar system's ever known. And I've bought my power tools.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is funny.
Yeah.
Summer's here.
Hey, Summer.
Sorry, I've missed the beginning of this.
Yeah.
It's not an outstanding Simak discussion. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
I think it is interesting how the history of this novel, with Campbell writing it, then getting him to Simak to rewrite it, then turning it down, and then that's the most interesting thing about this to me. And I think people that read it need to understand that, and not like, if you read this as your first Simak novel and you were like, I don't know what people are talking about him being a great writer, like, you need to understand a little bit of the background of this one.
Well, he even says in the in interviews where he needed money and he went out and bought, when they weren't buying so many science fiction stories, went out and bought a whole bunch of Western pulps, read them over the weekend, and started writing on Monday Western stories. So he started selling Western stories. And it's like, and he probably at this time needed some money. And so he dusted off this, and going back to, why did he publish it if he thought it was so bad? It's like, somebody's giving you a check, the roof's leaking, or the washing machine or the refrigerator has died.
But the pulp industry at the time is just absolutely replete with pseudonyms. Why didn't he use one for this?
Yeah, like he says he's never did. And that's in the interview, that he's never used a pseudonym. Like Campbell, everybody does. And the weird thing is, with Campbell's pseudonym, but Don S. Stewart is the main one. That's his better stuff than his John W. Campbell stuff. That's better.
Clifford D. W. Campbell.
Yeah. And Steve saying, the key space travel nuts.
Yeah. Lock nut.
Well, every character in this has a pair. So.
When you just look at the background bookshelves in this life, utterly glorious.
Glorious, yeah. I love it. Yeah, and it's cool too that so through the 1940s, Simak found himself or started writing this stuff, right? Because the one after this is City.
And that is such a leap.
It's a huge leap.
That's an
From this book
gulf.
to that is
huge. When did he start writing those stories, though?
I think he wrote them in the 40s.
He wrote them in the 40s, so they were before. So the real next one is actually this, which is next month's Time and Again.
Yeah.
Also known as
First
He Died.
And Time Quarry. Time Quarry is the original serialization of it, and in Galaxy by Gold. So
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure how. Like, that's the thing. I don't know how it got the title First He Died when it went into the paperback, because when it was first published in hardcover, it was Time and Again. It was Time Quarry, then Time and Again. Then it went to First He Died, and I don't know why or how that happened.
Well, there must have been another novel come out with time in the title.
There's mine.
Might have been, yeah.
It's like we've got how many different covers here?
Yeah.
Well, this is the
5?
first edition.
Between the four of us,
Oh,
we've
nice.
got
Oh, yeah.
5 so far.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
Sean, is that one? That wasn't Gnome, was it?
No, it's Simon and Schuster. It's a
Okay.
small one. It's small. It's the size of.
I love those little small ones.
See,
Small
this
hardback.
this is a normal, paperback today, and it's the same size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are cool.
It's not in very good shape. It's because it was cheap. I think last year somebody put it up on eBay for like £20, and I thought, I don't have it, and it looks okay, but there's a lot of foxing and it's dirty. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a first though, so that's kind of cool.
Oh yeah. Sterling Reed's just mentioned. I have this. This is on my TBR. Jack Finney, Time and Again.
Yeah, there's been quite a few, but when was that? Like, that's the thing. I wonder.
1970.
Yeah, you see, there's been quite a few called Time and Again, but I don't know
It's the original.
if it was at the time. But you see, that they were able to do this. Well, who's the publisher for the first he died?
That's Dell.
That's Dell. Okay, yeah.
Dell
So I don't know
paperback.
why they did that. But then that was not the first paperback.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So why would? Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't know why they would have done that. I don't know the reason.
Yeah, and then once it went to Ace to get reprinted, then it went back to Time and Again. This is I think the first Ace copy.
Because I think it was Gold that probably changed the title to Time Quarry for the serialization. He also changed the ending. I don't know where my galaxies are. I've got the first 3. It's October, November, December 1950 that it was published. And I should read that. I should do it like I did with Cosmic Engineers and see the differences. I know the ending is different, but I can't remember what the difference is because Gold changed the ending as he was apt to do.
I read Time and Again a long time ago. I don't really completely remember that one. So,
Steve's saying here, yes, freelancers have to go where editors are writing checks, but even so, nobody's forcing them to do secondary work. Too many SF masters thought a pen name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing. And yeah, he should have just but to see, the thing is, it wouldn't have sold. Probably people would buy it because it had Simak's name on it, but then they probably went, ugh.
yeah.
That's the bad thing. And then the bad thing is you put a pseudonym on it, nobody will buy it because they don't know who that is, So
Yeah.
and at this time, Simak was not well known at all, right? I mean,
he was
he was publishing a lot of short fiction, but no novels. Well,
yeah,
Cosmic Engineers was the only one.
Yeah, it's but he was well known in the magazines. He was a favorite or one of the favorites in the pulp magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a name for them to know, but for novel wise, because this is the Cosmic Engineers was, when was that published? Yeah, that was published.
Cosmic Engineers was 39.
50?
Yeah, no, the book
1950.
Yeah, so it's just before this.
Right.
So it just came out just before this.
That's when it was kind of put back into a novel from the serialized.
Yeah.
1950.
See, again, that would have been Martin Greenberg, not Martin H. Greenberg, but Martin Greenberg of Gnome Press, that probably asked him again, do you have anything? And or he may have said, you've got this serialized, let's make it into a novel. And again, he takes the money and runs, with it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people thought it was bad. Lester Del Rey in his I'm pretty sure it was him that said about Cosmic Engineers, it should have just stayed where it was. He thought it was absolutely awful. So I don't know if he said anything about Empire. I don't know. I don't know how often the Galaxy novels were talked about as reviewed as a book, because they were still a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
They were a magazine until you got a couple of the very, very late ones, the last ones that are actually paperbacks. Ira has,
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
But,
so what's in store for us with Time and Again? Are we gonna
time travel.
Start to see Simak as we know him. I've got the. Should I read the back?
Yeah, go.
It says Asher Sutton held a book in his hands, a book he was going to write in the future. It would be more controversial than anything ever written. Millions would give their lives fighting for or against its principles. But how would he come to write it? Could he stop himself? Did he want to? It made little difference, really. There was a war raging somewhere in the future, and both sides were coming back to make sure Sutton made the right decisions. Cool.
It's sort of like a religion gets created.
Back.
Sound familiar?
Sounds like Stranger in a Strange Land?
Well, and Dianetics.
Dianetics, yes.
Then this is the same time, surely. The Dianetics Dianetics had just been sued, and Scientology just beginning, surely.
Yeah, and it's not like, I think we'll be able to make some comparisons, but it's not blatantly obvious that there's comparisons. But I always thought that there was something in there about it, but I'll have to we'll be rereading it and see. The Vulcan Science Academy has determined that time travel is impossible.
Yeah.
And then
they've got no imagination, have they? Let's face it.
I love that. That's hilarious.
But yeah, it's I enjoyed this one. Again, I think I've only read this once, and that's a long time ago, but I remember enjoying it. I don't remember details about it. So, and I've never read the serialized version, so I think that I'm gonna have to try to find those. I don't know where they are, if I took them back upstairs or they're buried now. I'll have to try to find it.
Very good.
Well, I'm not sure who that's a question for you. I don't know who that is.
Do you mean Simak?
Yeah, for you.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks you all. This was fun, as always. Yeah. So looking forward to next month.
Comes back with
we can only go up from here.
Yeah, go up from here for sure.
What's after this? What's after Time and Again?
Time and Again, we got
Time is the simplest thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it? Well, what about Ring
Around the Sun?
Oh,
I think Ring Around the Sun.
Ring Around the Sun. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Ring Around the Sun, and then Time is the simplest thing.
Yeah, he did quite a few in a short period of time there. I think in the 50s there was quite a few that he did, and I've enjoyed them all. That's the thing, and the strange thing was, because of Empire, I never read it until last July. That was the first time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go. That's the question here. It's a question for you, Simak expert. Does your knowledge of how good he gets prompt you to read more quality into his early stuff than is actually there?
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah,
we've read a lot of his really.
I think you
great
do that with
stuff.
any writer.
Yeah, because you look in there and you see these seeds. Although this book is an exception, really, because
it is.
This one really is just not part of his continuity. You know what I mean? But in Cosmic Engineers, I could certainly see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's a
so
few.
I think the answer is yes.
There's a few 1930s, his early ones, that, especially the second one, is Mutiny on Mercury, you'd swear that, and that is him, but
Mhm.
you'd swear it wasn't Simak at all, really, either. It's like he has nothing. The world of the Red Sun, there's ideas in there. Even Hellhounds of the Cosmos has a little bit of stuff, and his other Mars ones has Simak in there. But yeah, the second story, Mutiny on Mercury, is just, it's so bizarre because there's like, it's, well, the premise is that there's a mutiny, and humans have enslaved moon men, and Selenites, I think, yeah, Selenites,
As
and
one does. Yep.
and Martians,
Mhm.
and they are having an uprising. So the main character uses a sword, and puts down the uprising and makes them back into slaves.
Hmm.
That's not really Simak, or
Yeah.
what we know is Simak. But I think he was writing for what he thought was, popular at the
market,
time.
yeah.
And
Interesting. Yep.
then basically also too, Campbell, I think forged him a little bit and formed him, but also too in 1939, he became a permanent. He had a permanent job now with the Minneapolis Star, Minneapolis
Mhm.
Tribune. So he had, a future there. So now he could start doing stuff that he actually wanted to do. He didn't have to chase the dollar. But then I guess at times when he did um, the westerns and the air war stuff, but that was when I think two children came along, so he needed some cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Well, okay,
very
doke.
good.
All right.
Well, we went longer than other times, so okay, so we got something. We squeezed everything
There's
out
something
of
to talk about.
Empire.
Yeah. All right.
So
Pleasure,
yeah,
guys.
so next time,
Mhm.
sometime, probably next month, sometime in May, we'll do Time and Again. Thanks,
Sounds
Sounds
everybody.
good.
good. Take care, everybody.
Bye.